Number 4 in the country, TCU taking on Baylor. That's right. We finally see a number 4, at least a top 4 number next to TCU. It seems like people are not sleeping on them after all, or are they, Steve? Because I'll tell you what, I've heard a lot of criticism along some of the major mass media platforms about TCU thinking they shouldn't belong there. Well, last time I checked, they don't have a single digit at all in that loss column. They are undefeated, one of only 3 teams left undefeated. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Slasher U. I'm your host, Christian Rao, here with my co-host, Steve Feck. We're going to break down this TCU-Baylor matchup, a Big 12 matchup, one of the toughest, if not the toughest, division or conference in all of college football. Steve, what's your thoughts on this game right off the bat? We've talked about TCU pretty much till we're blue in the face, or purple in the face, I guess we should say.
Yes.
What's your thoughts on the Horned Frogs here as they take on Baylor?
Well, be still my heart. I mean, this TCU team, what a great story they have been. And I love the way they play. I do have one off-field suggestion that's I think is going to improve the fan experience for all Horned Frog fans.
Okay.
I think the TCU marching band should learn and just play that song from Annie Get Your Gun over and over again throughout every game for the rest of the season. Anything you can do, I can do better, because that's the whole story of the TCU season. In every single game, they do something just a little bit better than their opponents.
Mm-hmm.
And they've done it week in, week out, no fails, no stumbles, and yet you still have a bunch of, I don't want to call them talking heads, because I don't know. Talking requires intelligence and having a point. So we'll just call them heads, saying that they don't belong in this conversation in the top 4. Again, I'm a fan. I'm far from a football expert. I'll challenge you on any kind of baseball stuff. I'm pretty up on my college hoop, but TCU has earned that number 4 ranking, and I'll even go so far. I was flashing up during the intro. I think they should be at least the 3rd ranked team in the country. They were inexplicably underdogs in so many games, like last week against Texas. They win it outright. They're supposed to get outscored. They scored just enough to win. Horned Frog defense is supposed to be tested. They bend, but they don't break. They just don't make mistakes. Certainly not late in games. And there's not that many penalties they commit, only 7 turnovers. TCU is legit. And yeah. TCU, I don't think anybody on TCU side really gives 2 hoots what anyone is saying in the national media. They've already gotten screwed about 8 or 9 years ago when they should have made the playoff, but it was like, oh, but they're TCU and it's this. And it was the same kind of conversations. They don't win big. They don't do this. TCU is a college football playoff team. And I'll even say they need to be considered even if they would lose one of their last games.
Yeah, you're on that boat. I'm not, only because I just think that if it's going to be a 1-loss team, they're going to hand it to either the Big Ten loser or Tennessee. I just feel like that resume is a little higher than the TCU, just because whoever they lose to is not going to be a Georgia loss or a Ohio State / Michigan loss, right? So that's the only reason why I don't think that's the case. I would love to see it, but I don't think it's the case. You're right. TCU fans are going to remember what happened years in the past. And they don't want to hear the same song and dance for this one as well. There's no doubt about it. They take on Baylor in Baylor on Fox at noon. They are a 2-point favorite in this game. Baylor is a team that, again, defending Big 12 champion. This is a team that we've paid attention to all season long, thinking they were going to make some noise. They kind of disappointed us in the middle of the season, but they've shown some good in the past. Lately, though, against Kansas State last week, they did not show up. Kansas State blew the brakes off them 31-3. Makes you wonder if they come back and rebound. Last time they had a loss against West Virginia, they rebounded nicely and won against Kansas 35-23. Is this the same kind of style that they're going to go after with Sonny Dykes and this TCU team? I have faith in the Horned Frogs. I think they win out. I think they're going to win the Big 12 championship. I think we're going to see them as a number 3 seed in the college football playoffs. I'm taking TCU to win this game. It might be close, because you know what? TCU finds a way to win. They've been down multiple times. I think 4 times so far this season. In the second half, they're still undefeated. It doesn't matter how they win the game. They win the game. And that should be good enough for this committee.
Yeah, and Baylor's going to need to control, the clock. It's just that simple. They're 5-0 when they rush for more than 170 yards, and most of those games it was over 200. TCU hasn't really allowed a lot of teams to put up that kind of number that way, but a Baylor has to control the clock. They have to keep the TCU offense off the field. They have to put pressure on the TCU defense, wear them down a little bit, see if perhaps, they get tired or weary, and then they can capitalize on a mistake late. But I think this game is going to mirror that Texas game a lot more than perhaps a lot of people would have thought earlier in the week. I just think that both teams are going to be patient, try to win it on their own terms, but TCU's just they do everything right and they
Mhm.
find a way. So I'm with you. It's TCU.
Yeah, and this rushing game for TCU. I mean, we've talked about Max Dugan. I think on every recap or preview talk with TCU this year on our live shows or in some of our previews, how amazing that story is from being
Yeah.
basically the backup quarterback to a Heisman nominee, if you will. Definitely breaking some Big 12 numbers. Nominee, I wouldn't say finalist. Nominee at some point, maybe not by the end of the season. But this rushing game has turned into a pretty interesting thing, pretty fascinating thing.
Mhm.
Condre Miller has been so fun to watch, and it's turning into a two-headed monster, if you will, with Demarcado as well. We've seen that towards the end of the game last week, where they had to take control of the clock against Texas, and they did just that. And it was on the backs of not Miller; it was on the backs of their other running back. And we're going to see a duo of running backs that one has over 1,500 yards, one has over 500 yards. That's fantastic, especially at a team that is still throwing almost 3,000 yards in a season. This TCU team is nothing to sleep on. I just
No.
we've been talking about this for weeks. That's not something to sleep on. Everyone wants to rule them out because they think they're going to falter, and it's like it's almost like people are just can't wait to see it happen. Why don't you think the other way around and see if they can just do the magical thing and see if they can go unbeaten, find their way in the college football playoffs, and then maybe against some of these teams that everybody knows or expects to be there, maybe they get a magical upset. That's what college football should be about, those magical upsets. Always root for the underdog, guys.
Amen. Amen. And TCU shouldn't be an underdog. That's the frustrating part. One of the proudest parts of this season covering college football for me is that we got on TCU pretty early.
That's true.
You
We
know,
did.
saying, I mean, maybe we weren't as high on them as we are, as we've grown over the last couple of weeks. But
Mhm.
early on, we were saying, don't sleep on TCU. This is a good team. Dugan's a good quarterback. Sonny Dykes is a great coach.
Yeah.
So
Ever
it
since
kind of,
that big Oklahoma win, we really started paying more attention to him. And I think that was what,
yeah,
week 4? Yeah, week
yeah,
4.
week 3 or 4, yeah. So it's something that again, we don't need validation. Our validation is when everybody out there on YouTube, comments on our clips, and please do so if you're watching this. Give us a like and a subscribe. That's what why we do it, because we're fans and we love to share it. But when things start to fall into place as we predicted or guessed, depending on which
Yeah,
side of the fence you're on,
that's
it's fantastic.
yeah.
It's fantastic. UTSA, another thing. So, we've been basically up behind the two best football teams in Texas in TCU and UTSA.
Yeah, I can't disagree with that whatsoever. What's your thoughts on this game, everyone? Let us know in the comments below. It should be a fantastic outing, regardless of whether you think TCU is going to remain undefeated or Baylor moves up and gets a better bowl bid, if you will. This game's 12 o'clock on Fox. This is the big noon Saturday game. Always a great time with that broadcast. I love that broadcast. I don't know
Yeah.
how you can't. 10-0 TCU taking on 6-4 Baylor. TCU, again, a 2-point underdog. You're going to see that game on Fox. Let us know your thoughts and predictions in the comments below.